One of the things that's always fascinated me as a drummer is the ability that certain musicians have to sound like multiple musicians playing at the same time. So whether it was drummers like Dave Weckl, or Antonio Sanchez, or Virgil Donati, this can be a really powerful musical effect, and it's something I always wanted to learn how to do myself. And when I was younger, I was told that there were some musicians that could even play in 2 time signatures at the same time, and that's what I want to investigate today. Now, in my last video, I explored a similar question, which is, can you hear 2 time signatures at the same time? And in general, my answer is no. But this is a quite nuanced and difficult subject to talk about. It's somewhat subjective as well, and so I'm not going to get into all the details about that, so you can check out that video if you want to. However, I do believe it's possible to play 2 time signatures at the same time, or at least create that effect for the audience. So all the examples I'm going to play for you in this video are illusions in the sense that I'm hearing them as 1 time signature, even though it sounds like there's a lot more going on. So I have many different parts, and of course I can focus on them separately to some degree, but I'm also very aware of all the connections between them, and since they're all related to a single pulse or a single meter and to each other, I tend to view these things as being much more connected and dependent on one another than actually truly independent. So not to say that's the only way to do it, but that is the way I'm going to approach it in the following musical examples. So how do we play 2 time signatures at the same time? Well, one obvious place to start might be polyrhythms. We could start with the simplest example of 2 against 3. So here we have 2 hands moving at different rates of speed, but I'm not convinced that this is 2 time signatures, so we're gonna have to go further to get this musical effect. So we can move this pattern to the feet to create an ostinato, and then maybe solo with the hands on top of that. So that still doesn't sound like 2 time signatures to me, but perhaps we could take this a little bit further out by accenting the hi-hat on every other note. So we're getting a little bit closer. We have this hi-hat against the kick, jump, 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 jump. But I still don't think this sounds like 2 time signatures. This 3 against 4 polyrhythm is too much of a familiar sound to create that effect. So let's try something a little bit more complex. Let's take a ostinato, in this case, in the left hand and left foot, that's 5 notes long. So 3 hand hits and 2 foot hits. So you could say that the left hand and left foot are in a time signature of 5/16. And then maybe with the right side, we could do something like, I don't know, a 6-note pattern with the right hand and right foot. So now we have the right side playing a pattern in 6/16 and the left side in 5/16. Together that would sound like this. So now I think we're getting closer to getting that effect of sounding like 2 time signatures again. Now I'll remind you that I'm still hearing this as one thing, and you can hear this as either in 5 or in 6, depending on what you prefer. But that's a separate issue, since how the performer is hearing it is not necessarily going to be the same as how the listener or the audience hears it. And what we're really focused on in this video is trying to create the effect for the audience of 2 different time signatures at the same time. Now, if we try some different numbers in the right side, we can make this a little bit more independent sounding. So I could play a 7-note pattern in the right side, and you'll notice that I've been accenting every other one of the 5-note patterns in the left side, so it's kind of creating a 10-note pattern. And now we have 10 against 7, so we're starting to get into territory where it's starting to sound like 2 different things. So up until now, we've been playing with just 2 16th note patterns against each other. In other words, 5/16 against 6/16 or 7/16. And There's another way that we could approach this, which is to have a polyrhythmic rate. So we can take the same left side ostinato in 5/16 and play those as quintuplets. And then with the right side, we can play a sticking that's 4 notes in that same quarter note space. So we have a 4/5 polyrhythm happening within this whole thing. But what if we took this 4 side, so what's now playing paradiddles, and we actually played a 5-note pattern in this 16th note context. So the left side will continue playing quintuplets and playing this 5-note pattern. The right side will play the same 5-note pattern, but at a 16th note speed, so 4/5.
Warning, potentially unmusical content ahead. This is a message from the Groove Police. Do not attempt this exercise at home. Or, well, I guess just don't attempt it on the gig. Yeah, it's probably fine at home. This is a warning from the Groove Police.
So in this example, we've got a couple different layers of polyrhythms happening. So we've got the obvious 4/5 polyrhythm, which is happening within each quarter note. That's happening between the left and right sides. But then we have this other polyrhythm, which has to do with the right side that's playing 16th notes. So in this case, it's playing 4 notes per beat, but it's playing a 5-note sticking. So it's kind of like accenting every 5th 16th note. And so that by itself is kind of a polyrhythm, right? It makes a polyrhythm against the time that we're hearing, against the quarter note that we're hearing as our pulse. So what if we took a pattern like this, a pattern that's already polyrhythmic in the sense that it's maybe a 5-note sticking within a 4-note subdivision, and made that our ostinato? In other words, what if our ostinato was not even in the time signature that we're perceiving in our head? Well, it turns out this is exactly what's happening in the Sungazer song Ostinato. In this case, we have a foot ostinato, which is really playing a 4/4 kind of a pattern. That's what it sounds like anyway on the surface. Right, so if you heard that pattern by itself, you would almost definitely hear it as being just in 4/4, 1 and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1. But the way that I'm hearing this and the way the song is structured is it's actually in 6/8. So I'm hearing it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which means that the ostinato itself is kind of a polyrhythm. It's creating a polyrhythm against the time that we're hearing as the listener. And then what gets really crazy is when you start improvising with the hands in a completely different time signature. So this is what happens in this breakdown section in the middle. So what's happening in this kind of drum solo moment is we still have this foot ostinato, which is kind of this 4/4 thing, but superimposed in 6/8. And then now we have the hands, which are playing a completely different time signature, or they're playing at least stickings that kind of make it sound like another time signature. And we first of all have a 7-note sticking. That sounds like this by itself. And then we have a 5-note sticking with the hands. And then when you put it all together with the foot ostinato, it sounds like this. And then to top it off, we've got the actual time signature that I'm hearing in my head. So we really have kind of 3 time signatures happening at the same time. You have the 4/4 in the feet, and I do quotations because that's not how I'm hearing it, but it is 4/4 from the outside perspective, I guess. And then you have the hand patterns, which are now playing in 7/16 and then 5/16, which have nothing to do with the 4/4 and the feet. And then you have this third time signature, which is the time signature I'm actually hearing in my head the whole time, which is this 6/8, which never changes throughout the song. So in a sense, we have 3 time signatures happening at the same time. And you could say that I'm playing 3 time signatures at once because I'm playing one with my feet, one with my hands, and another one with my mind. Now, this idea of the time signature I'm hearing in my mind, if there's nothing in the music that communicates that to the listener, then it doesn't sound like that time signature exists, right? So I'm technically only playing 2 time signatures that are audible to the audience. This is so complicated to talk about, but I'm playing 2 time signatures, right? Feet and hands. That is something the audience can hear. And then I'm also hearing the 6/8, which I'm not communicating on the drum set, right? There's nothing on the drums that says 6/8. That's just something I'm hearing by myself in my head. But there is an element in the music which is communicating the 6/8, which is the rest of the instruments and where the harmony changes on, the downbeats of each measure. So that's what's happening in this tune, and that's one way you might approach playing 2 or more time signatures at the same time, or at least creating that effect for the listener. So I find this technique to be super inspiring. Just the number of musical possibilities that are created when you have a technique like this available is super exciting. It's a pretty obscure technique. You're probably not going to use it all the time, but for the right situation, it can be really, really powerful. So I hope this gives you some ideas to experiment with and try out in your own music, and that's how you play 2 time signatures at once.